The Deathworlders. A story by user Hambone. Chapter 17. Battles. Part 2. Date point. 4 years, 8 months, and 2 weeks after Vancouver. Folktha, Cimbrian Colony. Captain Owen Powell.
I don't fucking care if they are small. This is a military base and that means the kids stay out of it. Or are you too fucking incompetent to do your job as a fucking sentry?
The soldier he was chewing out knew better than to respond, and just stood and took it. He earned points for that, at least. Powell cooled down slightly.
Have you got an explanation for me, Corporal?
Sir, 3 of them distracted me while the 4th snuck past behind me. I take full responsibility.
Noted and accepted. We're short-handed since the recall. That's a reason to be extra vigilant. Am I clear?
Yes, Captain.
You're fucking right I am. This is a serious incident, which means it's getting written up. But that's all I can be asked to do. This time. See to it there isn't a next time. Dismissed.
The man saluted and left, clearly relieved. As he left, he was replaced by Lieutenant Russ. Since the colony had been handed over formally to the British government, the Americans, Canadians, Aussies, and other Allied soldiers had all been recalled, replaced with a platoon from the British Army. They were good lads, but universally young and inexperienced, and there weren't quite enough of them. Most of the Special Forces had also been recalled, leaving only Powell and his hand-picked squad, including Legsy and Ross.
Found the ankle-biters yet?
He asked.
Yes, sir. They owned up. There's only 4 kids in town in that age range anyway.
I want a word with them. And their parents.
The weekly thing's tomorrow, sir, Ross pointed out. Raising it there might get the message across better.
Aye, good shout. What's the news?
Ross handed over some packages.
Dispatches in your comfort package, sit rep on the San Diego investigation, and a strategic report on nerve jam weaponry.
Lovely. Summarise that one for me,
Powell said, accepting the rest of his mail. Ross nodded and flipped through the file, mumbling slightly to himself as he skimmed through the summary.
Exhaustive testing, inconclusive, remain. At this point, the operating principles of this weapon system remain unknown and impossible to duplicate with Terran technology. Absence of token resistance only. Given the above, development of effective protection has not been accomplished, with even total sensory isolation from the effect offering no more than a reduction in its effectiveness. Acute cerebral hemorrhage. Wow, okay. While the weapon's effects are highly lethal at their maximum effect, probable long-term consequences of nerve jam trauma includes an increased stochastic probability of long-term complications, including schizophrenia, paranoid delusion, dissociative identity disorder, motor nerve palsy, epilepsy, and stroke.
Jesus fucking Christ,
Powell muttered. Ross cleared his throat.
At present, the only viable countermeasure to this weaponry in a tactical situation is destruction of the grenade if possible, and prioritising the termination of any hostile unit which appears to be deploying them. Engage at long range only.
Nothing we couldn't figure out for ourselves then,
Powell commented.
Fucking useful, that.
Yes, sir.
The captain sighed.
All right, spread that tactical advice to the lads, along with the news about there being no protection from the bloody things. Don't include the bit about the long-term complications.
Anything else, sir?
Ross asked, indicating the dispatches.
Not to act on. Today's Tuesday?
Yes, sir. Militia training today. Both those kids from San Diego signed up. I'm the new police chief's boy and his missus.
Good. Those 2 look young and fit, and Harry says his lad knows his way around a pistol at least. And if the boy's going into civilian policing, we're going to want him to know how to fight.
Think you might swing by later to inspect the training, sir?
Aye. Think I just might. Watching Legsy in teacher mode is always good for a fucking laugh.
Date point. 4 years, 8 months, and 2 weeks after Vancouver. Series base, Sol. Drew Cavendish.
And I'm telling you, you're bloody paranoid, mate.
Drew.
Cavendish was a picture of Zen calm, but he was slowly starting to lose his cool with his friend.
Have you seen the figures?
We always knew this was going to be a dangerous job, Cavo.
And I'm asking you, mate, have you seen the figures?
Did you actually look at them? Drew Martin nodded. Of course I bloody did. I know I layer it up, mate, but if my site leader hands me a report marked important and fucking safety incident statistics, then I fucking read it. Cover to cover. Twice. Good, then you can read this one too. Drew handed it over. Technically, Ceres Base was a completely digital office because ink and paper were expensive to bring up from Earth, whereas between the nuclear reactor and the solar collection fields, electrons were all but free. He'd paid for the hard copy version of the report out of his own pocket, wanting to make a statement. Nothing got the point across quite like physically handing over a 2-inch manila folder. The fuck is this? Drew M. asked, dropping it on his desk and opening it. Every significant, serious and critical incident report for the whole of Ceres Base since the launch of Hephaestus 1, Cavendish told him. Everything from the dodgy landing of the IBM S module and the relocation of the CHM, the sweet HDF emitter problems, the airlock seals blowing, the collector array hiccups, that god-awful mess in the refinery, right up to the power surge down in the canteen this morning. As Martin opened the folder and started reading down the summary sheets at the front, he added, I've also got personal testimonies, including one from Dr. Gunawadena, saying that in his considered medical opinion, the only reason we've not had any deaths yet is divine intervention. I put it down to good engineering, Drew M. muttered as he read. You and me both, mate. If everything around here wasn't triple redundant, backed up, safety checked and reinforced to hell and gone. Drew M. flipped the sheet over and muttered, Struth, upon seeing 6 more pages of summaries waiting for him, in densely packed 10-point Times New Roman. Shit! Is there anything that hasn't gone wrong up here? The IBM Z series mainframes, Cavendish said promptly. They're the notable exception. If you don't count their module landing wrong in the first place, the IBM labs and data center are the only things that haven't suffered failures at or near the maximum projections. So, wait, all this is in range? It's worst-case scenario stuff, but... Cavendish sighed through his teeth and turned his head away. Okay, admittedly, yes, it's on the extremely pessimistic end of our projected range, but it's still in range. Barely. If it's in range! Don't say it, Drew. I'm not paranoid, I'm telling you. I think we have a saboteur on board. If we do, he's a drongo. Who sabotages the place while being careful not to peek outside of what we prepared for? Cavo, mate, face it, you were just expecting things to go better. I was, Drew admitted. Because it should be. Drew M. fished in his pocket and aimed a green laser dot at one of the many documents tacked to his office wall. It should be inside that range, he emphasized. And it is. Barely. And we should be improving as we put things into place. We should be seeing patterns that we can compensate for. Instead, it's bloody everything. Anything can go wrong. Bloody right, mate. Murphy in action. Cavendish sighed. You're going to say I'm paranoid again, aren't you? Yeah, nah. I'm taking this seriously, Cavo. My right-handed God on that. We all are. But we can't jump straight to sabotage. Well, I hope it's not. Or if it is, that I talk you round before somebody dies. He stuck out a hand. Drew M. grabbed it, hoisted himself upright, and slapped his spare arm around his shoulders in a brief, masculine hug. Come on, mate. Let's hit the speakeasy, he said. Date point. 4 years, 8 months, and 2 weeks after Vancouver. Folk the Colony, Cimbrian, the Far Reaches. Adam Aries. A black belt in karate. Fucking hell. Wax on, wax off. The class laughed as Lexi pantomimed the exaggerated arm-waving motion and an all-too-serious expression. Adam laughed too, glad for the entertaining distraction, stopping him from going over and over the argument with Ava in his head. He hoped she was okay. Fucking seriously then, mate. Come here and come at me, he said, leaning on his back foot and gesturing towards himself, nonchalantly. The black belt stepped forward and took his guard. Legsy flashed forward with alarming speed for a man of his size. The black belt put up a few seconds of desperate resistance, but he fell flat on his back in the dirt in short order with Legsy's knife, a length of wooden dowel, pressed to his throat. None of that bowing and scraping bullshit, the huge Welshman informed them as he stood up. Karate is a sport. You lot here are to learn how to fight, and fighting means killing the other cunt before he kills you. Not bowing and scraping and scoring points, all right? He helped the hapless student up. How many times did I stab in there? Anyone see? 3. No, 4, Adam said, raising his hand.
Good boy. Legsy gave him a thumbs up. He turned to the black belt.
You're dead, mate. Which means you get to be my training dummy for the day.
This drew general laughter as the unfortunate man bravely lined up for demonstration. Legsy chuckled and waved a hand.
Relax, pal, I'm taking the piss. Now we're training for ET combat here, which is a bit different to fighting another human. The good news is, it's a lot fucking easier. ETs are slower, weaker, squishier, can't see, hear, or even smell as well as we do. All of these gives you a huge advantage. The bad news is, they've got some tricks and technology up their sleeve that we don't. And this bad boy is human enemy number 1.
Several people recoiled as the holographic projector, courtesy of Scotch Creek and the same technology that powered the colony's camouflage field, snapped on. And a full-sized hunter fidgeted and glared at them. It was truly hideous, an amalgamation of several human nightmares, from its vaguely arachnoid physique and slick pale skin, to the way that skin inflamed and exuded pus around the implants that violated its limbs, torso, and face. The face itself was an otherwise featureless ovoid full of far too many steak-knife teeth and an odd number of eyes, all of which blinked often and alone, without apparent sequence. The animation of the simulation was uncanny. It shifted its weight constantly, looking around, tasting the air with its tongue, which was an unnatural, startling ice blue, and tapered to a feathered end. Legsy surprised them by slapping the projection. It was the product of force field technology after all, and in fact creating a solid surface was easier than creating a visible one.
Ugly canini, he commented cheerfully. Well, it gets better. There's a fleet of these fuckers lurking right over our head right now. They've been here since we went public. Only thing holding them back is our system force field, and that's true for Earth too, just so you know. These bastards are why the militia exists. Because if we have to fight these things off, we will.
He turned toward the projection.
There's not a lot to go on about how these things live. What we know is they have leaders and followers, like a wolf pack. There's the alphas, and the bottom of the pile, and everything in between. We know they'll eat any thinking being in the skies, man, woman, or child. We know that for some reason they really don't like us, and are on a crusade to wipe us the fuck out right now. Some poor bastard got killed just last week, catching an escape pod here. The hunters got them. Latest news is they've started using special weapons just to stop us. Heavy pulse guns like getting smashed with a hammer. Plasma guns that'll set you on fire. Nerve dram grenade launchers that'll have you dead and twitching before you even know they've opened fire. Fusion claws that'll have your arm off like a fucking lightsaber. These things right here are the nastiest threat we face. By a mile. He turned back towards the by now thoroughly intimidated class and gave them that winning smile. And they're still stupidly fucking easy to kill, he said. Want to learn how?
Date point. 4 years, 8 months, 2 weeks after Vancouver. Isberk, planet Ikberzik. Kirk. Kirk could hold his own in a fight, and then some. After Kevin Jenkins, he was the being who had scored the second most hunter kills during the raid on Outlook on Forever. He'd kept to his training throughout his political career, and his new vocation as an agent of the human race, and felt pretty confident that his skills were now at the sharpest they had ever been. It gave him a certain sense of assuredness and confidence as he picked his way carefully through the Isberk street market. But that sense was hugely reinforced by the fact that Julian was in the crowd, following him. It was amazing. Humans stood out in the crowd despite their smallness. There was just something about the way they moved, looked around, held themselves. Everything about a human was subconsciously predatory, and the herbivorous species of the galaxy gave them a wide berth as a result. Even wider among those who had heard even a fraction of the newfound Deathworlder's abilities and reputation. But Julian could vanish. It was disconcerting. He would walk with Kirk, talk with Kirk. Kirk would look away, and when he looked back, there Julian wasn't. But if he spoke to him over the silent comms implanted in his head, the Deathworlder would be at his side within seconds, never approaching from an expected angle, always silent. It sent instinctive flight signals right through the ancient animal parts of Kirk's brain, which he had to override by reminding himself that Julian was his friend and protector. Pleasingly, it even made Allison jump. In fact, he wondered if Julian was doing it specifically to get back at her for her teasing.
"Jeez,"
she hissed, for the third time as she turned and found him walking casually alongside her.
"Will you stop that?"
Several beings glanced at her, alarmed by a raised human voice, then looked away, aware that taking too much notice of the business of others was potentially serious trouble. Oddly, they seemed to ignore Julian.
"Not joking this time," he said. "We're being tailed. Don't look."
Kirk and Allison exchanged a glance.
"Tailed?" Kirk asked. "Chinasho. 3 in the main group, 1 shadowing them. They're all wearing cloaks, but I saw combat harnesses underneath. Looked like a kind of uniform. White, with 3 lines forming a triangle on them." "Is their leader female?" Kirk asked. "I think so, yes. She has a prosthetic arm. Zokrup. A mercenary leader. Almost as famous as Five Skulls Zrypov himself, and with good reason." "Well, they've got some of those new jolt guns." "Options? Bear with me."
Julian stepped aside as a stevedore drone grumbled past carrying a crate of some kind and disappeared.
"Fuck's sake,"
Allison complained.
"Where are you, you son of a bitch?"
"Right here," he replied, walking past her in the opposite direction.
"Jeez!"
Julian kept going, vocalizing quietly over their private communications.
"Quietly, please. There's a left turn up ahead into what smells like a spice market. Kirk, there's a Vizcatic at the second stall selling, and I'm quoting here, the oldest and slimiest Zerks in the Expanse."
"Sounds nice. I could go for a really ancient Zerk right now." Allison muttered something that Kirk suspected might have been a complaint about how other species considered humans to be the strange ones. Julian just kept talking.
"Good. Stop off and buy one. Haggle with the merchant. What they do next should tell us what they want. Allison, just like I showed you in training, all right?"
"Sure," she muttered. "If they make a move, we'll let you talk for a minute, see what they want. If they're unfriendly, then we take out the 3 spares and maybe this Zokrup can tell us something."
"Non-lethal if you can, please," Kirk said. "The Chinasho syndicates tend to take a dim view of unauthorized violence in their territory."
"You got it, boss. Enjoy your nice, rancid, dripping Zerk." Allison pulled a face which only creased up further as they got closer to the Zerk vendor.
"Dear God," she complained.
"Fragrant, ain't they?"
"Delicious," Kirk commented.
"Good meeting, cousin. These smell as good as advertised." "Ah, it's an old family secret. All in the Blackrot culture," the vendor replied happily, launching into the patter that was shared by merchants the galaxy over. "My father always said the batch wasn't ready until half of it had liquefied." Is that a human? Only my translator says she looks very ill, and I heard they carry dangerous diseases."
"They have sensitive noses, and for some reason Zerk smells repulsive to them," Kirk explained. "Don't worry, she has a suppression implant."
"Zerk smells repulsive to them? I heard humans were strange, but The vendor faltered as Allison, who had gone a very strange color, shot him the kind of murderous glare that only a truly irate Deathworlder could. But he rallied admirably. 3 for the price of 2. And I'll throw in a frond.
"I have a better offer,"
the new voice belonged to, sure enough, Zokrup, who showed something to the vendor as her 2 associates leveled shotguns at Allison.
"You go on a break, and forget you spoke to this cousin of yours," she stated.
The vendor glanced back and forth twice, then fled, as did several others nearby. "One-shot Zokrup," Kirk said, an admirable picture of calm for somebody addressing a feared mercenary. "I'm flattered. Somebody must think very highly of me to decide that I'm worth your time."
"Compliments, Counselor Akandetik. If I didn't know better, I'd say that you were stupid enough to try and talk me out of my contract."
"A good thing you know better, then. I'm well aware that you don't betray your employers." Zokrup blinked slowly and visibly, the Chinasho equivalent of rolling her eyes.
So why the clumsy attempt at sweet-talking me?
I'm not allowed to be polite? Incidentally, is this a murder or just an abduction?
Oh, it's an abduction. For now.
Taking out the tail. Get them. Thank you, Kirk said to Zokrup and Julian both. He drew and fired. The Chinasho were all focused on Allison, who threw herself aside and rolled as she landed, fetching up behind a stall which grounded their shotgun bolts. And by the time they realized that in fact Kirk himself was the more serious threat, 2 of them were down with their limbs badly broken under the hammer blows of his pulse pistols, and his cybernetic arm had whipped up and extended the fusion blade hidden within it. The air seethed where the blade had slipped right through Zokrup's personal shield, and was now warring with the force field boundary. Greasy Chinasho's sweat erupted all over her face at the sight of a lethally sharp point, held perfectly steady, only an inch away from what passed for her nose. Having a total of 4 arms had some major advantages. Among them was the ability to hold 4 weapons.
Bad move, counselor,
Zokrup spat, even as she dropped her own weapon. If you're referring to the rest of your party, my own backup has taken care of that, Kirk said. Years of politics had schooled him in the art of ambiguity, never committing to specific numbers when vagueness could hint at accuracy, where precision might be completely wrong. Afraid I used a little too much force there, Julian added, arriving right next to the already nervous Zokrup, and nearly causing her to impale herself on Kirk's blade as she started. You guys really break easily. Kirk saw in the way Zokrup's shoulders sagged that they definitely scored a hit. Allison? She emerged from behind the stall. Smoothing her hair down, static electricity was holding it out away from her head, and crackling viciously as she tried to tidy herself up. Are bad hair days going to be a feature of decoy duty? She asked. Date point. 4 years, 8 months, and 2 weeks after Vancouver. Series base. Sol. Drew Cavendish. The largest part of excavating a giant hole in the ice, as with excavating a giant hole anywhere, was moving all of the material out of the hole. In low gravity, the job came with a whole mess of additional challenges. All of their gear had been designed and built in Earth's gravity, for the tolerances it imposed. Jerry-rigged engineering solutions had turned some of those limits on their heads. The sturdy steel arms of the excavators could now wield truly immense buckets, and, so long as they moved carefully and slowly, to account for the fact that the forces imposed by mass hadn't changed, were clearing the spoil much faster than would have been possible on Earth. Piloting those excavators while wearing a vacuum hardsuit was another matter entirely, and usually fell to Tracy Monroe, the mining team's petite, girly girl, who seemed to take a positive delight in being the one who got to play with the big manly toys, while all the roughneck males were stuck holding the surveying equipment and hauling the crates of explosives. Her helmet decal was a stylized Norma Jean, manning an enormous bulldozer and grinning wildly inside her helmet. "Hey, boss!" she called out as Drew walked past her cabin with the spray paint for marking drill points for the explosives. "Yeah?" "Why wasn't the geologist hungry?" Drew just rolled his eyes inside his helmet. "Do tell." "He'd lost his appetite." The open channel filled with groans and snorts of amusement. Somebody else piped up. "Hey, Marilyn, you know any jokes about sodium?" "Nah." Drew could hear the gleeful grin both of the jokers wore after the setup was received. "Jesus Christ." "My sentiments exactly." That one earned the culprit, an American coal miner whose racy fallen angel decal had earned him the nickname Wings, a chorus of amused condemnation, and he took a bow, a difficult task in the rigid hardsuit. It saved his life. There was a flash of light, and a thump, felt through the soles of the feet, as something bright streaked down out of the interplanetary dark, and carved a trench in the dig site behind Wings. To a man, the team turned away and cowered, protecting their faceplates against shrapnel. Drew felt something glance off his upper arm with a force that knocked him off his feet. He landed gently in the tiny gravity of Ceres' surface, and hauled himself upright, hollering into the open channel. "Everyone okay? Check in." He glanced at the impact site on his upper arm. The impact had dented one of the rigid plates rather than hitting a joint, so the worst damage was some missing paint, a starburst of ugly gray between all the scuffed yellow and black. "Jesus fuck shit, oh my god, fuck! Wings, check in." "I'm gonna throw up." Fuck! Drew looked up. The impact had flung Wings high into, for lack of a better term, the air, and he was tumbling wildly. Suit bubbled inside the high-visibility yellow glow of his emergency force field.
Don't you fucking dare, mate. Just like we practiced. Focus on your heads-up display. You remember?
Yeah, focus on the HUD. Deep breaths. With his mind snapped onto what he could do to help himself, Wings showed why he was on the team by rapidly getting himself under control, both mentally and physically. A few precisely timed puffs of propellant from his safer, and his spin was corrected.
Get yourself indoors, mate.
Drew ordered him. Way ahead of you, Chief.
Everyone else okay?
He asked. The request was redundant. His own HUD showed summarized information from all of the team members. Anyone with a breach, a popped field, or worrying vital signs would have been highlighted in red. But the very safety protocols that he himself had written called for everyone to check themselves and their work buddies. Redundancy saved lives. It took them only seconds to check in, confirm that they were all intact and well, and could see no alarming signs of damage on any of their fellows. He ordered the team indoors anyway. Nobody knew whether a damaged suit might blow after staying sealed for a few minutes, but he didn't feel like finding out. With his immediate duties taken care of, the next step was a sit-rep.
Tower,
he called on his operations channel.
This is Dig 1 Foreman.
What the fuck? Dig 1, serious incident up here. All radio traffic is being recorded. Over. The operator's over was obsolete thanks to the radio squelch, but the man was clearly being on his absolute best behavior for the record. Drew knew he'd been unprofessional with his own outburst, but the adrenaline was making it hard to keep a calm and composed outlook.
No shit, it's a serious incident. We nearly lost a man down here, he exclaimed. What the hell hit us?
We're still determining that, Dig 1. Over.
Well, while you're determining it, this dig's closed on my orders. We're heading inside for a full inspection. We've got suit damage out here.
Roger that, Dig 1. I have you, coming in. The radio squelched, then squelched again. Over. The place must have been a madhouse. Drew knew that the traffic operators were cool under even the most intense pressure, so for one of them to be so obviously flustered was worrying.
Keep me informed, Tower. Dig 1 Foreman out.
He was last into the triple-door airlock, and it was only once they were safely in the mining suit workshop, behind the base's triple-skin hull and thick concrete outer wall, that he allowed himself to relax and authorize the suit crack. Wings's suit was ruined. The rear of it torn up and peeled open by flying shards of steel-hard ice. The man himself was badly hurt, too, though sheer adrenaline had kept him from realizing the fact. Bloody skin was visible at the bottom of some of the craters and gouges. They cut him out of it as their first order of business, staunching the bleeding as best they could until the medics arrived and carried him away. Drew M. stood aside to let them pass as he entered. His perpetual smile and the amused creasing around his eyes were both gone. As much as his tanned skin would allow, he looked pale, unwell, and anxious.
"Struth,"
he commented, proving that there were some things that no amount of stress could drive out of him.
"Yep,"
Cavendish replied. "The fuck happened, mate?"
"Ask those useless twats up in the tower,"
Drew C. told him, turning around to start removing his own suit.
Yeah, they're about as useful as an ashtray on... Jesus, fuck! Cavo, have you seen the back of your head?
Usually this impossible query would have earned a sarcastic retort and some friendly insults. Instead, Drew paused, then unlatched his helmet seals and lifted it off. There was a triangular shard of ice, the size of a credit card, lodged in the back of his helmet, smack in the middle of the thickest bit, and still just penetrating through to open a hole to the interior, 2 inches to either side, and it would have lobotomized him. The whole crew gathered to gawk at it. The reverent silence was finally broken by the phone. Drew M. stabbed the speaker button to answer it. "Workshop, tower manager here." The speaker sounded much more composed than whoever Drew had spoken to only minutes ago. "You all okay down there?" Drew M. glanced around, then said,
"One of our guys is getting sewn back together. Got major suit damage on a few others. The bloody hell happened?"
"From what we can tell, one of the ore haul drones suffered some kind of control software failure and fired its primaries on final approach rather than retros." "How does that even happen?" asked O'Neill. "You got me there. The operator managed to force reset and restore control, but most we could do by then was deflect it. Taking it the other way would have crashed it into the base itself."
Sorry for the scare.
Cavendish spoke up so the phone could hear him.
Sounds like the right call to me.
Yeah, well, we're starting a critical incident investigation up here. Meeting's in 3 hours.
We'll be there,
both the Drews chorused. There was a click as the tower manager put his end of the phone down. Drew M. turned to Cavendish, his jaw set at a grim angle.
Bloody oath, mate. I'm never calling you paranoid again, he said.
All right, guys, that one's going to be it for today. I just have 1 or 2 more things that I have to take care of. Someone noticed that Carl sounded a bit like Hank from King of the Hill, so I'm going to do the Hank impression for them.
Now, I sell propane and propane accessories, but that boy right there, Carl, what he does is he figures out how to get to the psyche of the enemies of the American public. And he does that using very clear and calm reasoning. And by using a clean-burning fuel like propane.
And to the people who think I can't sing, this one is for you, because I can sing, and fuck you. Okay, here we go. I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah. There, that's all I got for you. Hopefully that's decent.